Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Choda. Welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. In this video, I'm going to give you a rather unusual, a borderline funny statement from the White House Chief Economic Advisor. I'm going to give you the latest update about the stimulus negotiations. And then I'm going to ask you a question regarding unemployment benefits. My name is Dr. Nitin Choda. Welcome to my channel Ignition Time. Let's go ahead and get started. Larry Kudlow, the White House Chief Economic Advisor, was interviewed on CNBC today, and he said, and I quote, "We can lower income taxes, particularly for the middle class, and reform the tax code, probably take additional steps to help corporations." And he talked about tax credits for firms that onshore. In other words, he said that when individuals employ Americans onshore activities, they'll get tax credits. And if you're offshore, you don't get those tax credits. Now, the problem is the president has talked about the payroll tax deferral, which, by the way, funds Social Security. A majority of the income that the federal government gets is from taxes from low and middle income Americans. And I have done another video on how the United States government gets money and how the United States government spends money. So I do think that everyone should watch that video. So definitely make sure you check out that video. But the question is, if you start lowering taxes, we can lower taxes, particularly for the middle class. That is going to substantially reduce the income of the federal government. And as you know, we're already in debt. We're almost $25 trillion in debt at the time I'm recording this video. Also, the CARES Act cost money, and a majority of the money from the CARE that came into that was flushed into the economy through the CARES Act was borrowed money. And also the new money that's probably going to come about, if at all, pertaining to the second stimulus. And I say if at all, because at this point in time, we don't really know whether there's going to be a consensus or not. That is also going to be borrowed money. And I thought one comment from someone in Twitter, his name is Jeremy Bentham, he said, "Larry might be the only person to ever to have graduated with a degree in fantasy economics." This was a Twitter message, and this was a response which I thought was interesting, to say the least, because we can't just say, hey, we'll keep cutting taxes, we'll defer the payroll tax, and we'll help corporations. I mean, where's the money going to come from? The United States government gets a majority of its money from the taxes of low and middle income Americans. Corporate tax rates are very low. You do away with the payroll tax. I mean, how do you run a country when you start to slash everything and when you have no income coming in, especially when that country is already in debt? At some point in time, we're going to have to face this economic reality and either reduce expenses or increase income so that we can balance out the budget. So that was the first aspect. Larry Kudlow's rather interesting statement. And I do believe that as we get closer to the election, the talk about stimulus and unemployment benefits will blend into political maneuvering in order to win the election. The two are not mutually exclusive. The two are now joined together at the hip. So any discussion that you see on stimulus negotiations and unemployment benefits, if that leaves out the maneuvering, the election, the politics of it, you're not getting the full picture. And that's just the reality of the situation. So make sure that you educate yourself about the full picture. And that's what I do on my channel. My name is Dr. Nitin Choda with Ignition Time. If you don't know anything about me, check out my introductory video on our channel, so you know exactly how I was able to live my American dream. I have the fortune, the honor, the privilege of living the American dream. Now let's move on to the next aspect of this video. Kevin McCarthy, who used to be the House Majority Leader, but now is the House Minority Leader, he was interviewed on CNBC today. And I'll let you watch this clip, but basically Kevin McCarthy said that the president took decisive action in terms of the unemployment benefits, and the Democrats are stalling things by way of the post office, focus on the post office and all the other things, all the funding that they want for the states. That's what McCarthy said. He also said that a lot of the money that was essentially flushed into the economy through the CARES Act has been appropriated but not spent. In other words, money was allocated, but it's still lying there and it hasn't been spent. So he said, let's spend that money. I want you to watch that video, and then I'm going to show you an interesting tweet from another expert, and then I'm going to ask you for your opinion. So first, let's watch this clip from Kevin McCarthy. Let's roll the tape.
Well, it really needs to focus on unemployment insurance. Fortunately, the president took some action there, but unfortunately, the speaker wants to stay at that $15 an hour extra from the federal government per week, even though Steny Hoyer says, no, we could come off that. I think PPP, you already have $100 billion still sitting there, but we have a lot of small businesses that are still being affected and need help. We could utilize that money, or maybe some even more. You have schools that are using a great deal amount of resources to make sure the schools are prepared for students to come in. We had more than $100 billion for that. We're arguing about how much. We were $5 billion away. I don't know why that couldn't be done. These are key elements. Resources to the states. There are more than $100 billion that's already sitting there that we could provide greater flexibility. There's $1 trillion that's already appropriated that hasn't been outlaid yet that you could utilize too. It seems as though Pelosi, the speaker, is wanting to have $1 trillion more, and she makes you want to spend it instead of saying, I already have it here. Can I just add that on to it? And that seems to be a real sticking point. Unfortunately, I think the issues we all could come to an agreement on. We know the need for it. The president did take some action because in the House and Senate has not come together. I'm usually not supportive of that, but in this situation, I am, simply because of the economy. It's too important. And I wish if we would just stay in a room. And what concerns me more than anything else, that they shifted the Democrats for this emergency meeting on the post office and said we all had to come back on Saturday. But if you watch, 68 Democrats wouldn't even show. 1/3 of them didn't even show up. And I would believe that the economy would be so important that everybody could show, but that we couldn't even bring that issue up.
So that was a clip from Kevin McCarthy. Now let's see the other side of the equation. On your screen, you'll see a tweet from Michelle Evermore. She's an unemployment benefits expert, and she's been featured in many news outlets. She's been all over the news over the past several months. And she said, and I quote, "Do not let them gaslight you on this. This thing does not work." Now, when she says this thing, she's referring to the $300 a week, the Lost Wages Assistance Program, which a lot of states have been approved for. Over half the states at the time I'm recording this have been approved for, but the money has not started flowing as quickly as it should. And she wrote, also, both a tropical storm and a hurricane headed for our shores, and the payment relies on disaster relief funds. So this is true. There is a hurricane headed for our shores, and there's a tropical storm headed for our shores as well. And $44 billion of money from FEMA went into what's called as a disaster relief fund, the DRF program, and that money is being used to fund the $300 a week. So what Michelle is saying is that the program doesn't work, and that a lot of the money that is being used to provide these benefits is money that is being pulled away from our emergency response from FEMA that was designed to help us during tropical storms and during hurricanes. Let me know what you think of her opinion. In fact, let's take a look at this headline on Bloomberg News. This says many Americans are still weeks away from getting the president's jobless aid, and 2 weeks after the order, it's been over 2 weeks at the time I'm recording this video since the president signed the executive actions. Arizona and Texas, at the time I'm recording this, and Louisiana is expected to be third. They're the only states providing $300 a week in aid. Everybody else is waiting. By the time the other states actually start providing the aid is projected to run out. And also a majority of US states have been approved for the program, but they haven't started distributing the funds yet. And there have been some states like South Dakota who turned down the funds. New York and other states like Pennsylvania originally were not keen on the funds, but then they ended up applying and getting the funds. So there's been a lot of delay. The bottom line is individuals haven't been getting the money yet. Let me know. Let's put up Michelle's tweet on the screen again. I have a question for my viewers and subscribers. Do you believe they've been gaslighting us? Do you believe this $300 a week enhanced unemployment benefit as a result of the Lost Wages Assistance Program was a political maneuver, was a stunt? Do you think there's some gaslighting going on? And again, these are the words of Michelle Evermore, who's an unemployment benefits expert. Or do you believe that this was a measure on the part of the president to essentially help people? In my opinion, this sort of bought us some time, because at the end of the day, legislation from Congress is the only thing that will result in the flow of federal funds to individuals seamlessly without having to have this sort of a workaround, which is FEMA to DRF to the states for the $300. And the original idea was a CRF fund, which the states have, which is CARES Act money, would then contribute to the extra $100. As we can see, that pretty much isn't happening. In fact, the administration sort of backtracked and said, hey, you don't need to chip in the $100. We'll take your existing contribution by way of state AI and consider that your $100 match. So the rules were sort of amended and made up as we went along since the president signed the executive order. Again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. Thank you so much for watching. If you did learn something new, please click like, please click subscribe, please enable notifications. And also keep in mind that we release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. So make sure you like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you get instant updates going forward. Please comment below and let me know let me know what you think. Are we being gaslit by the administration, or do you believe that this was something, this was positive, the lost wages assistance program, given the gridlock that exists in our environment right now? If you want to get alerts from us, get your cell phone out, send a text message with the word ignition or with the word time to 70,000, that's 70000, and you'll get added to our SMS list. You can also get added to our email list, and you can opt out at any time. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda. I look forward to seeing you in the next video at Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.